Joe Rogan refused to host Netanyahu on his podcast. Guys, if this is true, this is absolutely scandalous. So, according to Yair Netanyahu, Bibi's son, so he's probably pretty well informed, great wake up call for conservatives to remember Joe Rogan is not conservative. This is actually correct and really important. He isn't a conservative. He considers himself like a liberal, centrist, etc. And he shares that he has like kind of unbiased views, which I don't think is super accurate, but let's keep going. He gave platform to every single neo-Nazi anti-Semite on this planet. I don't know if every single one of them, but we're getting close. They were definitely getting close. But he refused to have my father on his show because he knows that he doesn't stand a chance against him. And all those years of anti-Semitic propaganda will go to waste. Okay. Joe Rogan claims Hunter Biden couldn't be president and says he's more intelligent than... Okay. This is so interesting if this is true, because number one, yes, Joe Rogan does have this claim. He does propagate the message that he, hears all views and he's open to all views. And actually, during the Trump presidential elections, the people who refused, i.e. Kamala, to go on the Rogan podcast, really at the end of the day, almost like destroyed their election campaign, because nowadays people want to see the authentic you. There's a reason people love shows like this. There's a reason that people see podcasts. Look, you can see that I'm sitting and I'm just casual and I'm sharing my thoughts, and like I probably don't have a massive agenda and it's not all fake, it's not scripted. I'm just saying what I think as I go, and people want that kind of information, which is why Joe Rogan has such a tremendously massive platform and podcast, which I'm all for, by the way. I think independent voices are amazing and great, and good for Joe Rogan for managing to create something that provides authentic conversation. The problem with it, as we all know, is that it also allows a stage for people who really don't have expertise or have really skewed visions, and you can go one way or another. To me, the problem is always going to be not about free speech, because again, a host should be allowed to have whoever he wants on the show. That's his prerogative. But if you're going to claim that you're showing both sides, it's really interesting that he wouldn't show Netanyahu. And if the Nelk boys, what happened to them after they had Netanyahu on their show, is any kind of proof of what Joe Rogan's probably trying to avoid, that's what's going on. So those unfamiliar, the Nelk Boys is this random podcast. They have a lot of followers. They're pro-Israel. They came here a few months ago, I believe, and they invited Netanyahu, and they have been absolutely destroyed online, okay, for having Netanyahu on what they claim was a very kind of, it wasn't supposed to be controversial. They're having one of the biggest leaders in the world. They just kind of wanted to give him a space to talk, and he did that. And it was okay. Like, it wasn't the world's best interview. It wasn't the world's worst interview. He just kind of repeated certain points. He tried to come off friendly. I don't know if that really worked. I think a lot of people felt that it felt very curated, even if it wasn't the Nelk Boys from him. And I think this is a problem that Netanyahu constantly comes across, that he's not in an honest audience. He's not in front of people who actually love him and support him, and so therefore he's always on guard. And I think people can feel that, and that's a shame, because I've actually met him a few times, and he's a really wonderfully warm, kind, and nice person. But that's a conversation for a different time. So Joe Rogan probably foresaw that doing that is going to get him unbelievably cancelled by the Palestinians. But the question is if that's what's going on, or if he really is at his root anti-Semitic. Is he really trying to not give over the messaging from Israel in a legit way? Look, he has brought in way more people who are anti-Israel. That's been clear, and he's brought in a few, and you could wager there aren't people who would go and who would do it. I know I would. I'd jump on that podcast in a second. I'd love to be on there and talk about what's going on here. And I think that's a big sign of somebody who has authenticity. If you can just go and talk, you have to actually believe what you're saying. It is not simple to be interviewed for so long and to not be exposed for what you actually believe, which is why Kamala Harris obviously refused to jump onto that show, okay? But if he's refusing it, like Yair Netanyahu is claiming, and again, this is alleged, we don't actually know this for a fact, that's a whole different story. That means he's actively and intentionally pushing a pro-Palestinian narrative. Because why wouldn't you have Netanyahu, one of the most controversial leaders in the world, on your show? I mean, it's a sure way to get clickbait. It's a sure way to kind of create a lot of buzz. And it's definitely a way to kind of give people the opportunity to make up their own decisions, right? To have this person on. I'm interested. I'm surprised to hear that he refused, but I want to understand why. Because if he is actually underlyingly anti-Semitic, or underlyingly being funded by Qatar, or being manipulated by the kind of right-wing woke movement, the right woke movement, right? That kind of movement of people who are in the right but are really obviously anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. And there's a distinction to be made between the anti-Israel and the people who are just really America first. But why wouldn't you have Netanyahu on your podcast? I think that's the big question everyone needs to ask. Why hasn't he been? And I think this is something that Joe Rogan could really, really, really easy dispel, because he could say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Netanyahu, come on my podcast tomorrow. And then Netanyahu, I believe, would probably do it because he's very, very good. He knows what he's talking about, and he means everything that he's talking about, which is interesting. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this crazy story this morning. Yeah, Netanyahu, though, he loves to cause a little bit of trouble and release things to the public, and he is so going into politics here in Israel.